It occurred to me last night what a great day yesterday was. So my thanks belatedly to those who, again, who came and spoke yesterday. It was a great day. It also occurred to me that this actually probably is the first marine surveying conference of the new decade. So how about that, hey? That's cool. The other thing that occurred to me, thinking about my presentation today, is that I am possibly the most trained person in marine surveying you will ever meet who's not a marine surveyor. What I mean is, I organize events like this, I come to events like this, I've done dozens and dozens now over 5 years. I know so much stuff, I surely ought to be a marine surveyor. Because after all, you don't need a qualification to be a marine surveyor, do you? There's no barrier to entry and anyone can have a go at this game. And that is, in my opinion, completely bonkers and fundamentally wrong. So here I am, I've come to America and I'm going to talk about accreditation. I don't wish to pick a fight with SAMS. Many of you are members of SAMS. And of course, you have come through a SAMS accreditation system. But let me assure you that outside of America, there really is no accreditation to speak of anywhere else in the world. And that troubles me. It troubles others in the industry. And what I'm going to show you now is the result of a 3-year research program that we've done. We are almost ready to launch this scheme. I hasten to add, this is not an IIMS scheme. Well, it's not a scheme for IIMS members per se. IIMS members who choose to come through this program, it's not mandatory. We'll get a discount. But what we've tried to do here is to create something internationally, an accreditation scheme for the industry internationally. And I hope, you know, you will kind of understand where I'm going with this as I start to unveil the presentation. I have just a couple of questions. Who in the room thinks they've got 20 specialization? Any hands? Who in the room thinks that you have 20 specializations? Things that you are expert at? Who thinks 10? Who thinks 3? Who has 1 specialization? Okay, quite a lot. So I don't think I saw anybody with more than 5, which is good because I don't believe anybody can have more than 5 specializations. I really believe that. And having spoken to so many people over the last 5 years, I've got some, let's just see if I can deal with that crackling. Having spoken to people over the last 3 years, nobody disagrees. Nobody has more than 5 specializations. So I'm going to talk you through the research we've done, the people we've spoken to. There are a lot of names on these slides you will know internationally, and I'm going to try and explain how this is all going to work. And straight away I'm let down with the technology again. Can't advance my slide. There we go. Right, as I've said, there is no barrier to entry into the surveying profession. And that was the first thing when I started my role at IIMS 5 years ago. I simply couldn't believe that. You can't become a doctor, you can't become a dentist. None of those things you can do without a huge amount of training and getting some formal qualification, recognition, accreditation, wherever it may be. But, you know, anyone can say, I'm a surveyor. I had boats, you know, my father had boats, my mother had boats. I know all about boats. It doesn't make you a marine surveyor. So my opinion, and those of those closest to me, is that it's time to rid the profession. You know, you guys are professionals. And if you're not a professional, you shouldn't be involved in this game. Surveying is a profession for skilled and competent marine professionals. It isn't for well-meaning amateurs, or as we call them in the UK, hobbyist surveyors. People who are maybe doing it for all the wrong reasons. So we've done a lot of extensive research amongst surveyors and also amongst, importantly, the people who are going to engage surveyors. And it gave some very positive results. We asked our members to take a vote on this back in the summer of 2018 at the AGM. 100% voted for us to move ahead with this initiative. So it came with a very strong backing. It's worth just looking at some of the accreditations that do exist. Although IIMS doesn't currently accredit, you know, our professional assessment committee goes a long way. And if you get the IIMS badge, then it might not be an accreditation, but it is a symbol that you have reached a certain level within the industry. In Australia, there is something called the DCV, Domestic Commercial Vessel, accredited marine surveyor. Not many of those. It's quite niche, it's quite specialist. And IIMS, our fellow surveying organisation out there, are working on a local scheme for surveyors currently. Obviously in the States you have SAMs and NAMs, you don't need me to tell you that. There is no international definition of what an acceptable minimum standard is to be a competent surveyor. And there's no international accreditation. So we're going to create one. Interestingly enough, when I started looking at this 3 years ago, I looked at just examples in the UK. You'll have the same things in America as they will in other parts of the world. If you are a coffin maker, right, this is absolutely true. If you're a coffin maker in the UK, you must be accredited. Wow. If you're a solicitor, you're going to want to be accredited in certain particular fields. If you are a builder or a roofer or a glazier, we have something called checker trade. Everybody now, you know, is checked, and you can put reviews up about the builder who's been around and done your work. So everybody is used to being accredited, and yet marine surveying still is not accredited. So some of the questions we asked in our research, our early research, we asked surveyors and those who use surveyors. In an ideal world, how important is it that the quality and competency of marine surveyors, I don't know what's going on there, are regulated? I can't, no, they're not. They're all muted. Mute all. We'll try. How important is it, no, it's not that. How important is it for you to know that a marine surveyor is assessed for competency? 87% said it is vitally important that the chosen surveyor is assessed as competent and can prove it. Yet again, my machine looked advanced. Don't you just hate working with technology, guys? Do you know what? I'm gonna stop this share and I'm gonna start the share again. Success. The next question we asked was, worryingly, these are the question was asked to those who actually engage the services of surveyors. Worryingly, there remains no barrier to entry into the marine surveying profession. So if you engage or work with marine surveyors, how important is it to you to know that a marine surveyor is assessed for competency? 87% said it is vitally important that the chosen surveyor is assessed as competent and can prove it. We asked those who engage surveyors, are you more likely or less likely to engage and work with a surveyor who is formally accredited? 68% said, yes, I would only engage or work with an accredited marine surveyor as a matter of principle. We set up a focus group, small group of people who we've worked very closely with over the last couple of years from cross-industry. The question we asked the focus group was, if IIMS was to implement such a scheme, how might you react when it comes to searching for and appointing a surveyor? Jeremy Knight, not some of you probably know here, he is Chief Operating Officer of Clipper Ventures, who run the Clipper Around the World race, part of Robin Knox-Johnston's empire. Jeremy said, we would take the accreditation as akin to a recommendation from the practitioner's peer group. A surveyor may be quite good at all sorts of things, but they will be masters of one or two. So unless the accreditation is in a specific area, it will be of limited value. Yves Vandenborn is somebody I've got to know quite well. He's Director of Loss Prevention for the P&I Club Standard out in Asia, in Singapore. Yves said, I would definitely be in favour of supporting this and working towards an industry minimum standard accreditation for marine surveyors. Continuing on, Harry Subaraniam. Harry manages a fleet of 30,000 vessels out in Singapore, always looking for marine surveyors all the time. And he said this: if a surveyor is listed as an accredited gas tanker surveyor, then we as a club wouldn't have to think twice on verifying to see if the surveyor actually had experience on this type of vessel. The MSP surveyor search would be the first and last sounding board for sourcing surveyors. Mike Vanstone. Mike runs, if you don't know Vattenfall, they're the big Swedish energy generator, huge now in the wind farm sector in Europe. Mike said, I would always try to find and use the best surveyor we could in that specific field of operation, so accreditation will give us huge extra comfort. We then asked, do you feel that establishing a higher level of formal accreditation and pushing surveying standards up is of less importance? Mike Vanstone said, I believe we should achieve the highest standards in surveying, as anyone can call themselves a surveyor. The ECMID AVI scheme, which I touched on yesterday, the scheme we run for IMCA, has achieved this. Once the MSP scheme is fully supported, it will gain real traction. And Jerry Minite again added, I would see accreditation as a way of improving standards. Perhaps the greatest value is not the marketability it confers on the practitioner, but that IIMS is actioning a commitment to ever improving standards. Just a few other verbatim comments. These are 3 UK-based insurance companies. Malcolm Stewart said, from an insurer who provides PI insurance, using MSPs as preferred suppliers would be a benefit to the owners, insurers, and also assisting in raising surveying standards. Karen Brain and Paul Winter both run schemes, some of you might know them, for IIMS members. Karen said, I would be minded to offer practitioners a lower annual PI premium, less of a risk. And Paul said, those again, the accreditation will become a low risk for us as an insurer, and that may be reflected in the PI premiums. Some compelling reasons. So, a minimum standard. Defining a minimum standard is difficult. We haven't quite yet bottomed this out. We've had all sorts of discussions, but I guess it's going to be something like this. An accredited marine surveying practitioner has objectively proven and evidenced his or her skills and competency in specific areas of marine surveying to meet the accreditation scheme criteria. So what lies the other side? That's a black hole. If I'm honest, I'm not quite sure. That sounds a bit not good, does it? But let me tell you what I think lies the other side. When I went in search for a definition of the word practitioner, this is what I found. Someone whose regular work has involved a lot of training. Someone working in a job that involves long training and high levels of skill. A person engaged in the practice of a profession. Someone practicing a skilled profession for which special education or accreditation is required. I don't think we would disagree with any of those. You're all practitioners in your own right. That's a trademark logo. We've registered the logo. The scheme will be known as the Accredited Marine Surveying Practitioner, but I'm sure it'll get shortened to MSP. These are some of the companies who've expressed their support and huge interest in working with us. In fact, they have been helping us shape this. It's worth just pointing out these 2 on the right here. I loosely would call them rival surveying organisations. They're membership organisations in the UK, the YDSA and SCMS, and we've been working very closely with them. They also intend to offer this to their members. In fact, they are helping us, if you like, fine-tune the scheme and the way it's going to work now. So, you know, we've got some big hitters here. TT Club, you might know them if you're involved with containers and cargo. They insure something like 80% of the world's cargo, I'm told. They're massive. And they're very much behind it. And the Maritime and Coast Guard Agency never endorse anything. But the mood music coming out of the MCA about all of this has been really interesting, to the point where they are considering putting their own internal surveyors through this process, which is really interesting, because they are trained to a high standard, but they want a third party to look at it and potentially endorse their surveyors. So there's a lot to play for. The stakes are high. I think I touched on all this yesterday, so I'm just going to flick through this. But, you know, our credentials, this will be run through the Marine Surveying Academy. We touched on the ECMID, the RMCI, and the IIMS standard. Those are schemes we've developed from scratch. It won't surprise you to hear that this scheme will not look too dissimilar to the ECMID scheme. It's about objectively proving evidence in your particular skill sets. The reason I asked you about specializations is we're not going to let anybody apply for more than 5 specializations. 5 is the lot. So you pay your fee. We've yet to set the fee, but it won't be onerous. Within your fee, we are going to assess you for one specialism in terms of material types. So if you are GRP and you want a GRP aluminium wood listing, we'll assess those 3 as part of your fee. And then there's a whole raft. In fact, we're working our way through the specializations. I think we're up to 152 for commercial ship, and we're about 80 for small craft. So that's how many we think they're out there. And to be honest, if somebody came along and said, oh, there's nothing on the list I want the accreditation in this specialization, we'll find a way to add that and do that as well. Trying to be flexible but robust with the scheme. It's worth just talking about the coding examiner scheme briefly as well. We're working really closely on that one too. That's all about the same thing. So in the UK, there are something like, well, not all in the UK, but there are 150 coding examiners. So these are the guys who are inspecting vessels up to 24 meters in the UK and other parts of the world under the British flag. They must be examined, and we simply don't know that these people are necessarily fit to do that work. So we're putting in a certification scheme there, and that will launch in January 2021. So where are we? Well, I've shown you a lot of research we've done. We're complete amongst our members, we're complete amongst industry, and we've had a long chat with those who actually engage the services of the surveyors, and they will become partners, because to me that's incredibly important that they are partners within what we do. So we're working on the specializations, as I've said. That's possibly the hardest piece of work we've had to do so far, but we're nearly done. So just to reiterate, Marine Surveying Practitioner, MSP, it's not mandatory for IIMS members, it's not mandatory for anybody. If an IIMS member chooses to upgrade their membership to MSP, in other words, they qualify as an MSP accredited surveyor, we're going to sit that above a full member and below a fellow. So we're creating a new classification within IIMS. Ultimately, it's an industry scheme. It can only be driven by the industry's acceptance and desire to work within it and to appoint accredited surveyors. Really important again that I make the point it is objectively based. This is not a subjective process. People are going to go through quite a strict learning. I go back to the ECMID scheme, we've rejected 100 out of 600 who've applied for it. So they simply can't provide the evidence. And sometimes people apply for, in the case of the ECMID scheme, 6 vessel types. They can't prove 6 vessel types, so they get 3 or 4 or 2 or 1, whatever. So it is about really, really drilling down to know that if somebody says, I'm an expert witness and that's my specialization, you're really, really going to have to prove that. If you can't prove it, under the terms of the scheme, you won't get the accreditation. We need to define the assessment criteria. We're working on that at the moment. We need to finalize the assessor panel, which will be made up of some extremely well-experienced, knowledgeable senior surveyors from across the industry. We need to then encourage our partners, supporters to go public. We need to develop a website. In actual fact, that's pretty much done. That'll be ready by the end of March. We need to prepare our marketing strategy, and then we expect to be launching, I think, in the last quarter of 2020, if all goes well. So that's it. Next generation of International Marine Surveying Accreditation Scheme is coming soon. If anyone's got any questions or observations, I'd be very happy to hear them.
Yeah, Mike, I've got a question.
Hi, Pete.
SAMS has, in my opinion, SAMS has some fairly rigorous criteria to be a member, an accredited member of SAMS. So I wonder what kind of integration relationship or whatever you have with this plan and working with SAMS.
That's a really good question. James has conversations with SAMS. Currently, I don't have conversations with SAMS. I think that needs to change. And I think at the next level, once we've finally scoped this out, perhaps by the end of March, I think I'll be talking directly to SAMS with a view to saying, you know, is there some mileage in working together with you? I repeat what I said yesterday. As an industry, we are stronger together. As institutes and organizations and associations, we must be stronger together. And, you know, let me be absolutely blunt about this, Pete, and also to those in the room. This is not a scheme that is going to be done in a year or 2 years or 3 years. This is going to take 15, 20 years. I don't know. Long, you know, I'll be long since retired. So my job really is to get this off the ground, get it running in the right direction. Interestingly enough, I've had already huge amount of interest from places like India. We have a lot of surveyors in India that, you know, they have nothing over there, and they like this kind of thing. They like to, you know, their peer group to know that they have got the badge. So I'm not sure that it's going to have an immediate impact in America, and it's not necessarily designed to do that, but internationally, I hope it will have some legs. So I'm not quite answering your question, Pete, other than with James's help, we do need to have a dialogue with SAMS.
Okay, thanks. I do think that it's going to be essential that a strong relationship be built around this program and SAMS.
Yeah, I agree entirely with you.